One of my favorite things about podcasts is something I actually don't offer here very often on Graced Health. That is the ability to listen in to conversations that are vulnerable and raw and honest, and it encourages me to think about how I would react in those situations or what I would say if I was a part of the conversation. Or sometimes it helps me grow as a person. I know I definitely listen to some great podcasts that do that. Today, however, I'm going to let you listen into a conversation that I have with one of my dearest friends about a revelation partner. And if you've never heard of a revelation partner, stick around. Hey there, I'm Amy Connell. Welcome to the Graced Health Podcast. This podcast is for women who want simple and grace-filled ways to take care of themselves, age their bodies well, and then, of course, we enjoy a little chocolate in the process. I'm really excited to bring you this conversation I have with my really good friend. Her name is Barbara, but we call her Bob. I really am not exactly sure why. I think it started from when we were in college. I have known her since I was 18 years. So that is well more than half of my life. And we were in Chi Omega fraternity together. There were two Barbaras in our, what we used to call pledge class. I think now they call it new member class. And so somehow they just someone decided, I don't know, that her name would be Bob. So if you hear me calling her Bob, that is the origin of that. Bob is an editor and a mom and a stepmom and is married to a musician. She and I have such a rich history. She, starting most currently and moving backwards, she has done a lot of editing for the original writing I did over on the Graced Health blog. She and I have trained virtually for 2 half marathons, the Route 66 half marathon that's held in Tulsa. And when I say virtually, I mean she was training in Oklahoma while I was training here in Houston, and we compared notes and we encouraged each other. And even though we didn't run it at the same time because we were different paces, we had the same experience. And it was probably one of the most meaningful experiences I've had, especially that first time when she completed her first half marathon. I could go on and on about how close I hold Bob to my heart and how just a wonderful human being she is, but I know she would be really mad if I did. So I will just start by saying she is probably one of the most non-judgmental people I know, and she has always encouraged me to dig a little deeper, think a little harder, and just evaluate some things. And she doesn't do that intentionally. She just does it with the questions that she asks, probably because she's a journalist and she's got that background. But that has really lent itself to the conversation that we are having today. We are discussing our experience, and which is a current thing because we're still doing it, as having each other as a revelation partner. And I think actually that's one of the things that we will start with is comparing each other's definition as to what a revelation partner is. So let's join in the conversation. So Bob, I have introduced people a little bit to you and why I call you Bob. I first want to just start with thanking you for your time. I know you're really swamped with work and probably taking the time out to talk about our revelations as revelation partners. We won't tell anyone. They're not going to know that you're taking time out to do personal stuff. We'll just call this your lunch hour. How's that?
I've been on the clock for a while, so I'm sure it's fine.
Yeah. Hey, so I thought it would be interesting for each of us to give our own definition of what a revelation partner is, because I think that that's a new term. I think that we actually made this term up and we coined it.
We have started a new thing. It's official.
I think so. So why don't you tell people, I'm going to put you on the spot here. Okay. Why don't you tell people what your definition of a revelation partner is?
So, when you think about the fitness community, there's this idea of accountability partners, which to me is kind of a dangerous, slippery slope, because if you have an accountability partner who's a friend, all of a sudden you're feeling guilty because your friend's going to find out you didn't go for a run, or you're feeling weird because your friend saw you eat a whole tray of nachos, or, whatever it is, whatever your poison is. And so we kind of struck up on this idea of, and frankly, I believe it was just a long car ride on a big commute, where we said, wouldn't it be cool if you could just tell somebody something without there really being any sort of repercussion in terms of like feeling that that person had a responsibility back to you to offer insight or criticism or encouragement. It could just be like a safe place to park your thoughts, unburden yourself. And so many times when you verbalize what you're feeling, it really helps to clarify those issues for you. So to me, that's what it's been.
Yes, I completely agree. I would say everything that you just said, except I would challenge you in that I think that this started well before that long commute on a road trip. I think that it started maybe a month before that, and very organically. Somehow, I think you had just started maybe tracking your macros or calories or something like that, and you're like, "Hey, I just figured this out," because you and I have had opportunities in the past. I mentioned in the intro that we've done a couple half marathons together. We've trained together virtually. And so I think it was a very natural place, but it really started increasing from there. But yeah, I think that the key word to me is safe, and with no expectation on either end, that if I say something, it's just going to land there. And that you take it, and that there's not judgment about it, and there's not like I said, expectation or accountability or anything like that. It's just, hey, this is something I realize. Because to your point, saying something out loud, I wish I knew the brain science behind it, but I know that there's some, because I know I've heard it. But I think that really solidifies those neurons, the neural pathways, we'll just call it that.
Well, it's funny you say that, because I was just at work working on a project with a coworker that we've been struggling with for 8 hours, or eight billable hours. And as she was explaining the problem to me, she goes, "Oh my God, just saying that out loud made me realize that I have a much simpler solution." And there's a function. I use it when I'm editing. I read out loud to myself. And when your brain hears the words, it just internalizes it a little differently than when you're reading or talking, just thinking to yourself.
Totally. Totally. I was thinking that we could take this time and just point out a few revelations about being a revelation partner, because I think that it might be interesting to some people who are either on a health journey, or who might be wanting to start one at the beginning of the year, or start one tomorrow or next week or whenever it is, as an alternative way of looking at their health, whether it be nutrition or fitness or whatever. So I'm actually going to take the first one.
Go.
Because I'm the host of this. This is my gig, sister.
You're the class leader. You go ahead. You show us how it's done, and I will do my best to mimic the steps.
And actually, the reason I'm taking it is because it's kind of the same thing as my definition, which I really feel like it's a safe space to say hard things, or say things that I maybe am a little ashamed of. I know that I was going through some of our texts that we had communicated, because we do the text and then the audio clips as well. And there was a time a few months ago that I was like, I had the worst eating weekend. And I was like, I had this and I had that and I had this and that I had that. And of course you were like, stop being so hard on yourself. But it was really, just kind of saying that out loud. Sometimes I think that even as much as we try not to, we have shame around things, because we feel like it's supposed to be a certain way and it's supposed to look a certain way. And it's not always. I don't care where you are. For most people, it's not that way. And so just being able to say that, and then to hear the validation of, that's okay, get over it, get over yourself or whatever. So that's kind of my first one. I have more emotional revelations. I don't know what your first one would be. This doesn't have to be your number one, just one of them.
Well, I would piggyback on that and say, shame is such a powerful and worthless emotion. And it's kind of like guilt, and that only ever impacts one person. And you reduce shame by discussing the things that you are ashamed of. And so when you're able to find, again, I think shame and safe, those go together. If you can find a safe space or a safe person with whom you can confide in, and you can sort of just lay your shame out there, which may seem really innocuous to the other person. You limit the power that that shame has to kind of impact your future behavior. I think so much of what we're doing, some of these cycles that we get caught in are involved with shame. And so it's really nice to be able to get that out and diminish its power.
Yeah. And really self-induced too. Because I think we both had moments that we were like, oh gosh, I realize this, or I eat too much when, or whatever. And then the other one was like, it's not that big a deal. Just take the next meal and make it healthy, or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'll let you go for your second point.
Well, I mean, when I think about, breaking that shame cycle and talking it out, some of the revelations that I've had with you are like, I'm ashamed of doing this because of that. And so when I started really, any success I've ever had long term in my fitness goals, I've almost always had to track what I was eating to see how many calories were going in and how many were going out. So for me, it's just that tracking is a key, and I was able to sort of communicate that to you. And tracking is a pain. You have to sit down, you have to figure out how much calories are in stuff. If you're a home cook and you like to cook like I do, it's really hard to figure out calorie counts, especially if you're, making a no recipe where you're just throwing stuff together. But having some reinforcement to like tracking, one of the revelations that I had that I share with you is that the more I track, the more I learn and the more sophisticated my decision making becomes.
Yes, I totally agree. And I hate tracking too. I have been tracking more because I have been working on my nutrition. I've been focusing on that a lot more in the last 5 or 6 weeks. And that's the one thing that's really tough for me about it. However, to your point, I think you and I both had some really interesting revelations about the fat that we consume. Like I since 1992 passed, when we were eating SnackWells all the time.
Right. All sugar free all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. All fat free all the time.
Right.
All fat free
Sorry.
replaced with sugar.
Right.
But I really don't have this fear of fat that a lot of people do. And a lot of women are in our generation do. And I think that I kind of took that a little too far just because I was like, oh, well, here's some fat or here's some fat. And, one of the things that I have realized through the tracking and then just through conversations with you is the foods that I naturally gravitate to will either naturally or by means of almost like a partnership have a lot of fat in them. So like we talked about salads, like we love salads, but then all of a sudden, the salad dressing goes on it. Or I've been in this habit of like, well, I'm hungry. I should have something with protein in it. I'm going to get some almonds or some cashews. And so there's a lot of fat in that. And so all of a sudden, yeah, with that tracking, it's like, dang, I have a lot of fat. I consume probably if just left to my own devices, I probably consume too much more, which that's turning in more into more nutrition than revelation. So I'll move on.
Well, I was going to say, it's funny because some of the revelations are science based. We're like, oh my gosh, look at this on the macros. I'm eating a lot more fat than I realized. And then some of the revelations are like, oh my gosh, on the macros, I'm eating a lot more fat when I'm really depressed after a hard day at work, or I'm sad about something, or I'm rewarding myself. And, one of my revelations is that apparently in my world, vegetables are just strictly a mechanism to get ranch directly into my mouth, whether they're dips, carrot sticks or a salad. So that's been kind of fun. But then when you look at some of I think for me, the biggest revelations have been through the tracking, looking at the science of what did I consume when, what was my mood? Where was I at that moment? How hard had I been working? How desperately was I feeling at that moment that if I didn't eat right then I was gonna, I just couldn't get through the rest of the day. And starting to look at some of those emotional patterns, and being able to then turn around and say to you, I find myself, for example, if I feel like I had a really productive day at work, I'm much more likely to come home and cook the dinner that I had planned with the vegetables and the meats. And, if it was a hard day at work, I might walk through the door. And I think this is pretty typical and say, let's just order a pizza. But when you actually say that out loud to somebody else, I feel like it's kind of helped to break that cycle.
I believe it. Because I think one of the things that I told you early on is I realized that I am more of an emotional eater than I realized. Now, when I visualize emotional eating, I think of like sitting in the pantry, sobbing into my Lay's potato chips, like, or whatever it
Right.
is.
For you soap opera fans watching, the women on the couch eating the bonbons, watching soap operas. That's our version of that.
Yeah, that's how
Hiding
I
in the
think.
pantry.
Or like I'm angry and I'm going to get you back and I'm just going to eat all of these Oreos, or whatever it is. But that's obviously a little bit more extreme. For my emotional eating, what I really figured out is I eat a lot when I'm tired. And I eat because I think my body's just kind of needing some kind of pick me up. And I eat when I'm bored or when I just feel like I'm supposed to. And some of that goes back to snack time with my little bitty toddlers or whatever it is. My kids get home from school and I'm like, oh, well, they're eating a snack. I should too. Well, you know what? My 6 foot, 200-pound kid might need a few more calories than I do, and he might need more snacks than I do. And so just kind of getting out of that and having those conversations, and they're not really even conversations that you and I had, by the way. They're more like texting. They're more like singular instances and I know you know this, but I'm wanting to clarify this. It's more like, hey, this is what I realized, and then it just lands. And maybe we'll respond or maybe not.
So one of the neat things that you've taught me is voice texts. And if you guys aren't familiar, that's where you just hold the little microphone down on your phone and you can just record essentially what's a voicemail that's delivered by a text. And it's super handy when you're having a thought that you want to share, but you don't have time to sit and text it, and you don't want to inconvenience someone by calling them, or you don't have time to talk through it. Those little vocal memos have been super helpful to us in that revelatory. And even though even though I'm not really telling you, it still feels like we're having a conversation. So for me, the crystallization on that happens when I hear you talk about something that resonates with me, or when I say something that resonates with you. Being able to, again, it's just that crystallization of the vocalization. It really seems to help.
Absolutely. No, I love that word. I love your vocabulary too. I always feel like I'm smarter after I talk to you.
That's so nice
But
of
that
you to
is true,
say.
because when you hear what someone else has said, then you're able to kind of sit in that and say, well, how does that apply to me? Or does that do I identify in any way, and whatever that is? And so it even though it was a revelation from you, it might be something that I was able to apply to my own journey. And I think that you and I too, I don't know how you feel about this. I feel like maybe you and I would have had expected to feel differently about some things, but it turns out that we were really on the same page about a lot.
What Amy is trying very
No, no,
nicely to
no, no,
say,
no,
that
no, 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 no. This
no,
is
let me
why I
finish.
started hesitating.
No, let me finish. I think it's important to note that you and I have really different fitness levels, abilities, and goals. For me to do a half marathon was an enormous accomplishment. For you, it was probably more, and I don't say this to diminish your accomplishments at all. It was more like a checklist of all the things that you enjoy doing. You like to run, and like um, you, for you, it was a fun check to be able to say, now I have accomplished this fitness goal. What's my next fitness goal? Whereas I'm going, I can't believe I did that. It's amazing, whatever. I'm more of a walker. Amy's doing aerobics and running and walking and, all kinds of different experimental stuff. So, but that's what's so interesting is that if you're looking for a revelation partner, often it's not necessarily finding someone who's the same fitness level as you or the same eater as you. It's finding someone that you really feel safe and comfortable with, being able to confide in them.
Yes. Yes. No, I do agree. And thank you for being gracious in that. And it's not it started coming out and I was like, this is not how do I change my thought as I'm sitting here being recording, talking to one of my dearest friends. You're beautiful with that, as always. Another point that I had was, which we kind of talked about this a little bit, but I do think it gave me a little bit of accountability. I know there were times that I said, I have got to work out, because as much as it may seem, I'm not always like super excited to get in the gym. And I would text you and be like, tell me to get my butt in the gym. And then we would talk a little bit and they'd be like, okay, now I'm stopping, go get in the gym or whatever.
Well, and sometimes I don't think I think I like this idea that we're creating a playbook for other people. And so I don't necessarily think I think you have to be careful on the accountability piece of it. You don't ever want to feel like I can't call Bob or I can't call Amy because I've failed today or I'm suffering from shame and I no longer want to share that. Sometimes it's just nice to talk to a friend who knows what you're going through to say, hey, I really don't want to go to the gym, because as soon as you say that to me, you're going to go to the gym.
Well, that's true. That's very true. Yeah, saying it actually made it happen. And that's a very good point. I forget this is a playbook. I didn't really realize that.
That's what this podcast has become. It's a how-to guide. That's what I'm all about professionally. How can I create something that can help somebody else do this better?
Well, I suppose in fairness, my whole thing is how to provide simple ways to take care of yourself and age your body well. So we'll go along with that. Sure. That's the Grace Health Playbook on Revelation.
Grace Health Playbook, Chapter 30, Revelation Partner.
Any other thoughts that you might have had?
One of the things that you and I both shared was that with the holidays coming up and with the new year and stuff, as we get out of our routines, some of the challenge is real to go home to your parents and eat not just like overeat at Thanksgiving, but just like those when you're there for 2 or 3 days and you're trying to figure out, okay, I'm out of my element. What do I eat? How do I make this work? And so you and I talked about that quite a bit. And we've also talked about our changing metabolic needs and just sort of coping with the sense that what worked for us at 25 doesn't necessarily have to be the same amounts in both fitness and nutrition. I don't have to run as fast as I did in high school. Here at coming up in mid 40s. Okay. I'm already in my mid 40s.
You're in the mid 40s already.
I like to pretend that 44 is still my early 40s.
Keep pretending.
Okay.
You're mid.
But then my late 40s will be 49, not 46. But yeah, I think again, just coming back to the idea that that we have established just a fun, safe place to store our thoughts. It's not a journal or a fitness tracker. It's just a caring friend.
Yeah. Yeah.
What about being at home? Did you struggle a little bit?
I think what you said about taking off or being out of your element, because I know when I'm hungry, I know what I can go to. Like one thing I have almost every day is a protein shake with my beloved Healthy Scoop. Like every day. Well, I don't love a lot of meat. And so it's a plant-based and it's just really easy for me to add in some protein with that. I didn't have my Healthy Scoop. I didn't have my almond milk. And so, yeah, I definitely, it's not that it was unhealthy food. It was just things that I don't typically have. And so I had to think more about it. And, when you start talking about decision fatigue, going back to what you were talking about earlier about going home after a productive day versus a difficult day. I mean, I think some of the things that play into that are the decision fatigue. And then if you don't know what you're eating, or if you don't know what your easy go-to snack is, or whatever that is, it makes it a lot harder and to make those good decisions, especially if maybe what you're used to is a little more limited.
Yeah, I think that's a great point.
Yeah.
I think the other biggest takeaway that I've had on this is really examining the impact of exercise on my mental and physical well-being. So when I'm friends with somebody like you who is pretty active and pretty fit, and I go through periods of inertia where I'm not doing either anything or hardly anything at all, being able to have somebody to say out loud to, I went for a walk today. I feel better. The endorphins are like drugs. This is a good thing. That's been super helpful.
Yeah. Yeah. I've seen that in you, and I haven't wanted to push you on that because that's not what this partnership is about, but I'm hoping that you can hold on to that and carry that with you. And, we all go through periods of ups and downs, but that has been really fun for me to witness you experiencing, because I think that those are the kinds of things that keep you on the path that you want to be going on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and as somebody who's we joked about this earlier, sort of that lifelong fitness journey that sometimes, or health journey, I should say. As someone who's been on a lifelong health journey for their whole life, very consciously, and I know we kind of all are, but I feel like some of us feel it more profoundly than others. I would be happy to share with your listeners that since we have started doing this I think we started kind of in, I'd say September, in the last 3 months, I have managed to drop a dress size and I attribute a lot of that to the triple factors of tracking, a little bit of exercise, and a lot. I have increased my exercise quite a bit because I've been enjoying it so much. So I'm trying to kind of jump on the bandwagon, and the ability to talk to somebody about it. So if I would say to people, if you've had the two or the one, you can't run your way skinny per se, and you can't, you may go crazy trying to track food to lose the weight that you want. But those three components have proven to be a really nice path forward for me. So I really appreciate that from you. And I really recommend it to people if they can find it. Yeah. Maybe you should offer a paid service.
Just to be the safe landing space.
For only $19.95 a month, I'll be your safe landing space.
That might be the newest, freshest way to monetize a podcast.
Right. Let me listen. It'll be like Frasier. I'm listening.
Well, and that leads into the final point that I'll have, and then we'll wrap it up. But I think one of the things that I've really loved about this is it's allowed you and I to communicate more. And I think that it has helped our friendship. I think anytime you kind of peel back those layers and dig in a little bit, it's going to strengthen a relationship. And, you and I picked you up at the airport, or you came in to Houston. We drove 3 hours. We had a girls' weekend. We drove 3 hours back. I mean, those were some great discussions. Mm-hmm. And not only about health. Look, guys, we did not spend 6 hours talking about food and fitness. There was a lot more.
We talked about boys, so.
But I think those kinds of things too kind of do set the stage for growing and deepening relationships. And so,
I've told some of my younger friends, man, I can't wait till you hit. When I got 30, I stopped stressing out about stuff so much. When I hit 40, I really stopped stressing about so much. And I also found myself more willing to be vulnerable with the women I was friends with. And I think, if you've got somebody out there that you trust, we've sort of proved that you can strengthen that relationship by being vulnerable and sharing things. And, maybe it's not about fitness and nutrition. Maybe it's about, someone that you're, maybe you have a partner or someone that you're a caregiver with, that you have a friend and you're both caring for an elderly parent, or, maybe it's somebody that is a similar work partner. I think that if you find a safe place to land, it's really great too. It's proof that vulnerability is not as icky as I once thought it was.
And that's a great point. I actually love that you said that, because this doesn't necessarily have to be just with health and food and fitness and all of that kind of stuff. I think finding a safe spot to land anywhere. I mean, even if you're dealing with, a partner who has a drinking problem, now I'm stepping into difficult territory. My point is, you can probably find someone who you trust, who you can just say the things, and that will help you on your healing path.
Totally.
Yes. Hey, I need to let you get back to work.
I'm going to sneak away. I have company in from out of town, and so I'm going to go show her off my sunny Florida town.
Yeah. Well, speaking of one reason why you've been exercising more, it's beautiful out right now.
It does make it a lot easier when it's 75 in December.
Yeah, exactly. Bob, I want to thank you for your time. I want to thank you for your friendship. So you're looking away right now. I'm reading your body language, and you're like, now you're staring at me. This is when you start to deflect. But I cannot tell you how much I love you and how dear you are to me, and how much I just cherish our friendship.
Well, I feel the exact same way, and I love you too. And I'm really grateful, and I appreciate the opportunity to come here and talk about this. And I hope somewhere out there this helps somebody.
I'm sure it will.
As your words often do for people.
Oh, well, and yours. Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
She is just the greatest. What a dear, dear friend she is. And I am so happy I got to share her with you. And I am not kidding. I really do feel smarter every time I talk to her. I think I'm going to try and use that word crystallize more often. Isn't that a great word? Hey, I hope this has given you one more tool in your toolbox as you approach the new year and start thinking about your health goals and what can work for you. As we finish up here, I just want to leave you with the one simple thing that I've been trying to do, and that is a revelation partner just needs to be someone you trust. It doesn't have to be someone who knows more than you or vice versa, or even on the exact same path. It just needs to be a soft, safe landing place. So I encourage you to think about who that person may be for you. Hey, real quick, if you have not gotten a chance, make sure you check out the resources tab over at gracedhealth.com. I have all kinds of things over there for you to help support you in your own health journey. I have HIIT workouts, high intensity interval workouts. I have a grab and go breakfast that you can prepare ahead of time. I have a 14-day devotional. I have scriptures to pray over your health. And I'm really just trying to equip you to find your own balanced, sustainable health. Hey, thanks also to those of you who have rated and reviewed this podcast. It means so much. If you haven't done that, I would so greatly appreciate it if you would. And also, if you think that this episode would be valuable to someone, or if you want to explore it with someone, this is a great opportunity to just hit that share button, send it to them, and let them listen to it. It might spark some interest in them. Okay, that is all for the day. Go out there and have a grace day.